manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Van Tassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi, everyone. Stephen Van Tassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Hey, glad to have you along. I hope you've had a great week. As you know, we typically publish on Fridays, but so we are recording this obviously before Friday. Maybe not obviously to you, but certainly to me. We are not recording this on a Friday, but we tend to do our presentations, of course, in advance. Do take a few minutes of your time, if you would, to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you can be notified of updates. And then, of course, join us on our Facebook page with the Pest Geek Podcast community. You can certainly you can talk about your triumphs and your trials and anything else that's going on there about all things related to pest control. But we are very glad to have you on board. Of course, if you want to reach out to me and suggestions, questions, criticisms, yes, even criticisms, you can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Well, we are very pleased to have a special guest here today, Dr. Michael Wierda, Pesticide Safety Education Director at Utah State University. He's a busy man. He's hard to get a hold of, but we have finally been able to snag him for the podcast. And what he's going to be talking about today is the important issue of respirators. Yes, respirators, the thing you know you should be wearing, and you're not probably wearing it enough. And we're going to talk about that today. Well, welcome aboard, Dr. Wierda. I'm really glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little about yourself. What got you into Utah and into pesticide safety education?
So I went through school, did the undergrad, master's, and then when I was looking for a PhD, I ended up falling into environmental toxicology. And we did the dissertation work I did was tracking legacy pollutants, PCBs, DDTs, old school organochlorines in Michigan's aquatic ecosystems, and we use bald eagles, baby bald eagles specifically as our tool to track that. Top of the food chain, biomagnification, and all this. So did that, and then once that was done, I found myself in Arizona, where I ran the pesticide safety education program there for about 4 years. And then an opportunity in Utah came up, and I moved up to Utah. And it's been really quite nice coming from Michigan and then going to South Carolina and then Arizona and then to Utah, where I actually have 4 seasons again, has been a real nice change of pace to get
getting back a little bit to your roots. So before we get to the respirator, I think I'm certainly interested, so I hope our viewers are as well. Talk a little bit about what some of your findings were. Give us sort of a thumbnail sketch of some of your findings. I mean, DDT is pretty persistent in the environment. Talk to us about what you uncovered.
So the Bald Eagle Biosentinel program, which is in Michigan, has been going on for probably 15 years now, if not longer.
Wow.
They started tracking bald eagles in Michigan in the early 60s. And when they first started, there were 33 breeding pairs in the state. So 66 adult eagles throughout the entire state of Michigan.
Yeah.
The Bald Eagle Biosentinel came along later, but that population tracking continues. And what we've seen is DDT, we find it in 90+% of the birds we sample, but it's at levels below where it's causing problems anymore. So we've seen the DDT levels, they continue to drop. PCB levels also, other old school organochlorines. All the levels are coming down, but they're all still there.
Yeah.
We find it.
How far were you testing down to? A billionth, a trillionth?
Parts per billion.
Parts per billion. Okay, so pretty small.
Now this is 8+ years ago, so right. I'm going off memory, but if I recall, when I was a graduate student, we could get down to, I think, about 3 parts per billion. And once we were below that level, we couldn't trust the equipment anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
So we found it in the birds, but it was at levels low enough that we couldn't trust the measurements coming out of the mass spectrometer that we're using to do that.
That's amazing. Now, as just a side question, the PCBs, were they getting washed off the landscape and then finding their way into the Great Lakes, and then the fish, and then the eagle eats the fish? Or is it simpler than that?
No, that's basically it. Like the DDTs, we found the highest levels along the lake shores, and that's where the fruit belt is for Michigan.
Oh, okay.
So more DDT was sprayed there for more insecticide control.
Sure.
PCBs came from a lot of things. They were an industrial coolant, so they ended up in the environment that way often, and they were used in the big electrical things on the power poles. I forget what they're called.
Right. Transformers. Yep.
Yeah. And a lot of those, and those I evidently were notorious for leaking also.
Yeah.
So they got into the environment, they got into the bugs, they got into the fish, they worked their way up the food chain till they got to the bald eagles. And the reason we use bald eagles was a couple of things. One, it's a charismatic megafauna, so people care about it. If we tried to do this with mud puppies, we wouldn't get much attention.
That's right.
And they're at the top of the food chain. So the teeny tiny amount that's unmeasurable in the lake biomagnifies up through the food chain, and you can measure it in the eagles.
Yeah, it's good news to just see that we have seen progress.
Yes.
So, but yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that you were able to talk a little about that. I think it's fascinating. Maybe we'll have to have you on to talk about that in more depth. That would be kind of neat, that whole process.
The DDT, sorry to derail real quick, but the DDT PCB, that whole thing is an environmental success story. We realized we were doing something wrong. We made changes to it, and the bald eagle population came back in Michigan. I started talking about the numbers. There were 66 early on, 33 breeding pairs. 2009, last year, I was working on the project. There were over 700 breeding areas in the state. 500 plus were active every year. So from 66 adult breeding birds to over 1,000 in a 40-year span, and mostly due to
recruitment, right? Recruitment, because they were able to survive before. We don't hear enough good. We normally hear all the horror stories, but there have been some positive successes, and certainly the bald eagle is one of them. And it got removed from the endangered species list, which is, I think, even it's not even on the. Is it still on the threatened, or has it even been removed from that? I don't recall.
Sure on that. They still have lots of protections, of course, through the Bald Eagle and Golden Eagle Act and Migratory Bird Act.
Oh, they have a ton of protections. I don't think
but I'm not sure where they are on that list anymore.
But they've certainly come a long way. Well, now we get to the other issue we talk about, and that is your work in the area of respirators, which is sort of the love-hate relationship in our industry. I would think certainly with pest controllers. But while who likes to wear a respirator when they're crawling through a hot attic? No one really does. But the reality is you should. And Mike has some really great information here that's going to help us make this a little less painful, and so they deepen our knowledge. So go ahead, talk about your program.
All right. So I got involved basically with respirator safety protection and education and fit testing training. Shortly after, there were changes in regulations that led to changes that were going to come to states. 2018, there were big changes that came I believe they became active at that point, that required more training and stuff for people who wear respirators. So I started working with people throughout the country, other pesticide safety education programs, and we started trying to develop a way to train people to learn more about respirators, how to use them, and also how to make sure they use them properly. And that's really, really one of the most important parts of this whole discussion.
Now, just to back up a bit, was this part of the Farm Worker Protection Program that was driving this in 2018? So the EPA changed the regulations on that. So can you talk a little about the Farm Worker Protection part of the label a little bit to help some of our viewers understand where that would be in the label? They probably just skip it because we're not really dealing typically with that with farm producers here in the program.
So there's a thing called the Worker Protection Standard, which applies to agricultural workers, and under that they made some changes related to respirators that involve the trainings that we're talking about. But on the pesticide label itself, there's a box that says agricultural use. and that part will have information about specific things related to that product, and then it'll usually make a statement along the lines of and WPS. So all of the WPS, worker protection standard stuff, isn't on the label, but certain parts that they find important for that product are, and then a reference to the WPS also.
Which is sort of a boilerplate of what they have to follow, like
Yes.
like re-entry times, and what they
Yeah.
have to wear for clothing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, what their PPE is, what the restricted entry intervals are, and all that sort of stuff. That's on the label too, restricted
Okay.
entry intervals. And of course, this is all for agricultural use.
Right. Okay, so this program was mandated by some changes from the EPA, which certainly raised. And have you seen a lot more pesticides requiring respirators now as opposed to before?
I haven't personally, but my focus is very specific on just pesticide safety education. So I don't know the products that well.
Yeah.
Anytime
Okay.
someone contacts me with questions about a product, the first thing I have to do is
Look at it.
find the label,
Yeah.
read the label, and see what the safety requirements are, because I don't have a background in spraying pesticides, so
Sure.
I haven't dealt with that much.
Just as a personal anecdote, I was looking through a label on strychnine and I was stunned to see that they now require a respirator to apply strychnine.
Oh,
It's not just simply pouring it into a dispenser or something anymore. You have to wear it while you're applying it. I was stunned to see that.
Is strychnine applied as a dust or a powder?
It's usually it's treated grain. And
Oh.
so they must be thinking that somehow it's rubbing off when you're using it. I thought this was, people have been not using a respirator for decades.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
no, we haven't had people dropping over dead or anything. And so now I was shocked.
Yeah, it could be particulate too.
Sure.
If working with the grain is just going to give off a bunch of particulate dust.
I'm
sometimes
assuming
they'll
that's what it was, but
Yeah.
I was shocked by it. But yeah, go ahead.
All right. So when you're going to wear a respirator, I guess let's talk about some basic respirator stuff. We'll talk about our two main types of respirators that are used most often, and then the two main types of offensive material removers, if you will.
Okay.
So we have two main types of respirators. We have this guy, which
Full
is
face.
a full face.
Yep.
And then we have this one, which is just a half face.
That face.
Now the
Okay.
difference is fairly obvious. One
Yep.
covers half your face, the other
Full face.
the whole thing. One of the nice things about the full face respirator
Mhm.
is if you're working with a product that requires eye protection, it's built in.
Right.
So you get eye protection. Another nice thing in my opinion, about wearing a full face respirator is there's a handful of different ways pesticides can enter your body. One of them is through your skin. If we want to use the $5 word, that's dermal. So dermal
Yep.
entry through your skin is one way it can go into you. And there was research done quite a while ago where they looked at the rate of absorption on different parts of your body, and your forehead has a very high rate of absorption,
Oh,
similar to the back of your hands and a few other parts of your body. So the forehead and your ear canals and stuff like that absorb more readily. So wearing this gives you a coverage up on the face and all that sort of stuff, and you have your respiratory protection. So with respirators, there's two main types of air cleaning that you're going to do. One is just filtration, and filtration is just what it sounds like. All it's doing, actually, allow me to be more specific, filtration of particulate matter.
Mhm.
So you're filtering out dust and things like that, and that's what this is going to do. So this is just a little filter pack. This is actually, most of us have seen the N95 masks, the dust masks, the filtering face pieces that became very much part of our lives in 2020.
Right.
Not the cloth thing your grandma made, the actual stuff that was produced and has a manufacturer like 3M stamped on it or something like that. This is basically a different variation on that. So the filtering inside is doing the same sort of thing that the other mask does, and all it's doing is removing particulate. You'll see on here, let's see if I can pull this off.
Yep, it's on there. Just move it a little bit to your left. There you go. Yep, the P100.
So right here, it says NIOSH and it says P100, and both of those are telling you a couple things. The NIOSH is an approval stamp. So it's been checked, it's been tested to make sure it's properly working. There has been reports of filtration, not these ones in particular, more the dust mask style, where there's been counterfeits made. They have something that looks like NIOSH, but it's not really NIOSH. So you want to pay attention to what you're buying, and make sure you buy it from a reputable source. Yeah. What I mean when I say reputable source is I would go to your local farm supply shop or Granger or something like that. Don't buy your filtering masks off of the internet. Buy them locally from someone you can look in the eye and talk to. You have a lot better chance of not buying fakes then. So again, this is just filtering out dust, and it's designed to filter out very, very, very small dust, 0.03 microns, which is insanely small. But that's the stuff that gets really deep into your lungs and can cause the biggest problems. So these are rated for their ability to remove those tiny, tiny particles. If they can remove the tinies, they'll get all the bigger stuff also. So those are what we call filters. Now this mask has on it something a little more involved here, and this is a cartridge. This is actually a combination unit. So the difference between a filter and a cartridge for the purposes of respirators is filters remove particulate matter. Cartridges remove specific chemistries. There's no way I'm going to pull this
I think it's going to be too small.
But what this says right here is organic vapors.
Yep.
So this cartridge is designed to remove organic vapors. So if you were spraying something that had an organic vapor in it and it required a respirator, this would be the cartridge you would want to get. So the cartridge is this bottom half. The top half here is actually another filter, just like this guy. But it's just a pre-filter. So there's a filter built in to take out particulate. And then there's the cartridge behind it to take out specific chemistries. So there's ones for ammonia, there's ones for acids, there's ones for organics, there's ones for metals. There's lots of different variations on them. So if you're going to wear a respirator and you're going to wear it for your job, you have to get a medical evaluation to make sure that you're physically fit enough to wear a respirator. You have to then be fit tested for the make, model, and size respirator you will be wearing for your work. And you have to learn how to properly put it on, take it off, and do what we call positive and negative seal checks. Positive and negative seal checks are something that you do every time you put on your respirator to make sure you have a good fit. If you don't get a good fit, you need to make adjustments. You need to look your respirator over, see if there's any wear and tear on it that might be causing your problems. Try your positive and negative seal checks again. And if they're successful, then you can go about your work. If you can't get a positive and negative seal check to work, do not put on a respirator and go start doing work that requires it, because it's not working.
So there's three items you mentioned there. One was the health questionnaire.
Yep.
That you can fill out. You don't have to be with a doctor to do that. You can do that on your own. It's like 5 or 6 questions. Basically, are they just trying to make sure that you're healthy enough that the extra resistance you're going to get with the respirator, your lungs can handle it, and you're not going to go pass out.
Yeah. Yeah,
And if you're
that's what they're after. They're making sure that you have the lung and you don't have a heart condition and
yeah,
stuff like that to take the strain, because wearing a respirator and breathing in a respirator, even just standing still,
right.
is more strain on your body than
It
every
is.
other
Yeah,
time you breathe.
yeah. And
Um,
so if you have trouble climbing a flight of stairs, you need to get medically cleared to be without a
yes,
doubt. So
yeah. Well, you have to get medically cleared,
yeah,
period.
period.
No
But I
matter
mean,
what.
you really need to go see a
Yeah,
physician to make sure you can
yeah.
do this.
And
Uh, the next thing is the fit testing, and so
mhm,
there are two different types of fit testing that someone
there are.
can do.
There are.
Okay,
There's qualitative and there's quantitative fit testing.
okay.
Qualitative fit testing is what is done more commonly, or was done more commonly. Quantitative fit testing has sort of had a boon with COVID
Oh,
because of
really? Okay.
the less interaction with respirators and hands-on and stuff like that.
Mm,
But to get back to them, so qualitative fit testing is basically you bring the respirator you're going to use, you put it on, and then you're put inside of a hood, and then we spray a testing agent into it, and you go through a series of different things. You have to take deep breaths, turn your head side to side, look up and down, bend over and stand back up, read something, a handful of different things just to make sure that those regular work movements that you would do while wearing it don't cause a seal break. So as you're doing that, something sprayed in. There's a sweet, there's a bitter. People used to use an irritant smoke
mm,
a while ago, but that doesn't get used nearly as much because
yeah.
it's an irritant smoke, and this is respiratory safety. And then but
But there's
into
less
doing
faking
those.
on it. There's less faking with it, though. I'm
Exactly.
told.
Well, and that's why I use the bitter.
Use the bitter.
I
Okay, so
use
you
the
don't use
bitter.
the
Yeah,
banana.
I use Bitrix,
Okay.
because if you use the other one's saccharin.
Yeah.
So it's just a sweet. So if someone is just trying to, get through so they can do their work
Yeah.
and don't want to deal with it or care or whatever, they can fake it with the saccharin. But if they get that Bitrix on their lips and they lick it and you're looking at them, you'll know it.
You'll know. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so
People lie in these health tests, which is really
exactly.
kind of scary when you think about it.
No, and
But
that's another point that's worth making is when you fill out your medical evaluation, fill it out honestly.
right.
Don't
Yep.
answer it with what you think the doctor's going to want to see so you can get approved, because it could quite literally be a life or death thing.
Right.
If you fake it and put on a respirator and then go into a situation where you're going to breathe toxins, you could have a big problem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, so,
So and then the
right.
quantitative.
So
Quantitative is.
quantitative, I've never done it. I've
Mhm.
only seen a little bit of video going on, but the quantitative, they have some sort of adapter that connects to your respirator. And then there's a machine that literally measures the number of particles that get into the respirator through the
Yeah.
valves or whatever, or if anything gets in. So qualitative is based on taste. So qualitative type things. Quantitative is quite literally a count of how
Yeah.
many pieces get in.
And there's usually a fee with the quantitative. I
Much
went through it
higher
one.
fee. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I went through it.
Yeah. A lot of times fit testing can be free. There are people who charge for it and stuff like that, but the qualitative will cost a lot more because a qualitative fit testing machine is
Yeah, the
10
quantitative.
plus
Yeah,
$1,000, I believe, if I
yeah.
remember correctly.
But it's more accurate, and it's
It's much
certainly
more accurate,
it's much more accurate. And how
and
often does
nobody can
someone need
fake
to
it.
go? How often does someone need to go through fit testing?
So you have to be fit tested and be trained in respiratory safety every 12 months.
Every 12
So
months.
once a year, you have to do that.
Okay.
The medical evaluation, those vary
Okay.
on what the doctor says often. But usually you see doctors saying 2 to 3 years, they want you to come back and get another one.
Another one.
Um,
Okay.
and another thing to keep in mind with all of this stuff is you sort of need to keep an eye on yourself too. So if you have a respirator, you've been fitted for one specific respirator and it's worked really, really well for you for a long time, and then you decide to go on some sort of crash diet or something, and you drop 20 pounds, your face is going to change, the shape of your face. If you have dental surgery, that could change your face, and all that sort of stuff. So those sort of things can change the fit of your respirator. So if you have drastic changes, if you lose weight, you gain weight, dental surgery, something like that, nose job, whatever you do, you're going to want to make sure you get refitted and make sure that your respirator still fits you properly.
Is there any research that discusses which mask is more effective or has fewer leakage problems? Is the full face mask usually as you know,
Right.
tighter fit as opposed to the half face, or does it not matter?
I've never heard of any research talking about
Okay.
whether full face versus half face works better.
Okay.
Nor have I heard of any research about company A versus company B having better fits.
Okay.
I can tell you from working with some colleagues in North Carolina who do a lot of fit testing, they find that 3M and Honeywell, between those two companies, they can almost always fit someone into a respirator, but they do have occasions where Bill just can't get a good sill in a 3M medium, but he puts on a Honeywell medium and it's great.
Great. Yeah.
So there's variation between companies, and I'm sure there's variation even within product line runs, but
And those are pretty good established companies too. So
yeah,
those would be quality places to look for. You know, I paid $80, I think, for one of my full face masks, and they can go up higher from that. So, you know, don't skimp on this, folks. I mean,
well, and what we're talking about, these guys are air filtering respirators.
Right.
You can go even bigger and get yourself a self-contained breathing apparatus with a tank of air that brings it into you. And you can also get the hood and cowl type things where it's almost like a motorcycle helmet that goes over you and has a neck piece that hangs down. And then there's a battery with a fan and a cartridge on
Positive
it.
pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's pulling air in and pushing it into the mask with you. And that's something that people with beards wear.
Yeah.
Because facial hair will not allow you to get a good fit with your respirator almost always.
That's awesome. So you have I understand you created some trainings, and so talk about, you know, where the genesis of that, where you got your funding, and let's talk about how people can get a hold of this training that you've done.
Okay. So we were doing respiratory safety and fit testing trainings in Utah. I did some down in Arizona. I teamed up with Colorado, and we did some there also. And what I started to establish here in Utah was what I called the Fit Testing Kit Initiative. I had fit testing kits that were, big important word there, were in 10 different extension offices. And those kits were available for any pesticide applicator or anybody in Utah who needed fit testing. We had trainings on how to fit test on an annual basis. So the hope was people would come to our trainings, learn how to fit test, and then when their crew needs to be fit tested, they would go to the extension office, they would borrow the fit testing kit at no cost whatsoever, with the suite and the Bitrix and everything in it, go back, fit test their people based on their training and their knowledge on how to do it, and then return the kits back, and then someone else could use them. That program got established in 2019, and then early 2020 hit, and suddenly people didn't want to share respirators at all. So all of those kits have been brought back to one central location, and I'm still working towards getting them back out there. We've just sort of been waiting it out until it's reasonable to have respirators for people to share in public again.
Sure.
So with that whole program, all of the funding for all of that came from HICUS, which is, I should have looked it up, the High Intermountain Health Safety Alliance. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Okay. All right.
Um, so it's out of Colorado State University, and they support health and safety and agricultural workers and stuff like that. They had an emerging issues grant, and this was very much an emerging issue, the need for these trainings. So we got funding to bring colleagues from North Carolina Agro-Medicine, who are the East Coast colleagues I spoke of earlier, who have lots of knowledge in this, to come out here, teach courses, help us train people and establish everything. Because at that time I was still learning respiratory safety. I wouldn't say I have as much knowledge as them by any means. And if when I do another series of workshops, I want them here again.
Right.
But we had workshops planned for spring 2020. Of course, they got canceled. We got a 1-year extension to do it in spring 2021. But when that came around, our colleagues were still not allowed to travel out of state. So then I asked HICUS if I could reallocate the remaining funds and produce 2 online respiratory safety courses. Thankfully, they said yes, which was amazing. So that's what we did. We produced 2 50-minute respiratory safety courses. We produced it with our partners at North Carolina Agro-Medicine, also another group of partners at the Ag Health Safety Alliance. And then we did it through the National Pesticide Safety Education Center. Bringing all of these different groups together means we had decades of experience in respiratory safety, in pesticide safety education, and even in presenting pesticide safety education through video and interactive stuff. So the people who produced our modules know pesticide safety education and have been working in it for decades.
Awesome.
At least 1 decade, if not multiple.
So it's not another boring video.
Well, I mean, it's still a safety video, so it's not like all spectacular.
But it's not just someone. I mean, I went to a government website and it was awful.
Yeah, we produced these with a program called Articulate Rise, which basically means you scroll your way through the course.
Okay.
So a screen will come up and there'll be text down below and then like an audio to play. And once that's done, you scroll down and you click to get to the next thing, and then you scroll down and you'll have interactions and stuff like that. Okay. So the basic idea is just to keep people more engaged instead of exactly what you mentioned, a 40-minute PowerPoint presentation that they push play and just sit back and wait for it to end.
Right. Yeah. Well, that is awesome. So what is the first class? What is the first 50-minute class on? Is that on the health and fit testing, or how does that talk about the 2 classes?
So one of them is all about respiratory hazards in agriculture.
Okay.
So it talks about just all of the different hazards that could exist in agriculture, from dusts to even welding, to spraying pesticides, molds and all that sort of stuff. Okay. So it talks about that more. So that's the first one. That's one of them. And then the other one is a proper respirator use module. So that one's going to go through when and why a respirator is necessary. It's going to talk about the regulatory requirements behind respirators. It does talk about respirator fit testing, respirator types, how to properly seal, physical symptoms, and respirator fails. And then there's a little quiz on the end of that one. Now, when I say it talks about respirator fit testing, it talks about fit testing. It explains how fit testing is done, but it by no means is training you to fit test.
Right. It's just making you aware of what you're going to go through.
Exactly.
It's an awareness. But how about the positive, negative checks? Does it demonstrate that? Okay.
Yeah, there's demonstration for the positive and negative checks in both of the courses.
Okay.
And for both the tight fitting respirator, which is what we've been talking about, and for those loose fitting ones, because you can do positive and negative checks even with those filtering face piece cloth.
Nice. And how about respirator cleaning? Which would that be, the second one or the first one as well?
That one is in the proper respirator use.
Okay, so that'd be
For
more too.
sure. There's a section in there all about cleaning, and the steps you need to go through to clean the materials. And that's actually one of the activities towards the end of this, that course. You have to do a matching. So there's step 1 through 13, and you got to say, this is my first step, this is my second step. And once you get all the matching done, you click a submit button, and it tells you if you're right or you're wrong. And if you were wrong, you get to try again until you get it right.
And what does it cost?
The courses are available in a couple places. They're up on the USU, the Utah State University campus, but they're also up on Extension Foundation. That's who I'm trying to get to.
Okay.
So they're up on the Extension Foundation campus.
Extension.org.
Let me
I
look.
think that's
campus.extension.org.
Yep, campus.extension.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the courses they're 50 minutes long. So they meet the EPA requirement for 50 minutes of instruction for 1 continuing education credit. And they cost $20.
$20.
So they're $20. They're basically, you get charged because it's the convenience of being able to do it when you want. They are asynchronous, so you can start them, go have lunch, come back, finish it. That said, you want to make sure you hit save and all that sort of stuff, because if you start it and walk away to lunch and your browser crashes and you didn't save it,
right, you start over.
It's not our fault. You didn't save it.
That's right.
So the nice thing about these, or the way I've set it up that I really like, let me look at my notes and make sure we haven't jumped past a handful of things. Yeah. So these courses will support other PSEPs in other states. And it's going to support other PSEPs in other states, not only by this educational material being nationally applicable, so it's applicable to their applicators in their states, but it's also going to help generate revenue for their pesticide safety education program. So the way I have it set up is the course costs X number of dollars. The university, of course, takes their chunk for us being part of the university and for overhead and all that.
Yeah.
There's a small piece taken by Extension campus for housing it. And then a small piece taken by the National Pesticide Safety Education Center, because they're going to manage all of this for me, because I don't want to manage it. I have other jobs I need to do.
Sure.
But then the remaining, which is going to be 40%.
Okay. So
no, the remaining part. So 60%, 60% goes to the university, Extension, and NEPSEC. The remaining 40% gets split between my program and their program.
Nice.
So I still get some of it, but they get the equal amount. And I wanted to do this because through the National Pesticide Safety Education Center, there's a whole revenue sharing system they have set up where if I produce a manual, or let's just stick with the study guide or with the module, I've produced a module, it's up online. If people in their state complete the course, they get some of the money back. So it's not competing with them, and it's also supporting their programs in my eyes. Granted, it's taking a little bit of money from them, I guess, if it's 20 CEUs for everyone, but it's giving back as much as I can, basically.
Yeah, no, I think the point is that they would have had to create the program, that they still have to do all the housing, and that can be quite a barrier, especially for PSEPs. For those in the audience, those are pesticide safety education programs. We use sometimes these acronyms, and so I want to make sure you know it. That's the person at the university you would contact for part of Extension to maybe get some continuing ed credits. Perhaps you'd go for your licensing. It depends on what state. Sometimes it's held by the state lead agency, which is typically your Department of Ag. Sometimes it's run by the land grant university. Sometimes it's a shared program. But anyways, that's they're stressed for funds, and
Mhm.
it's creating educational materials can be quite energy intensive,
Yes.
quite involved. And so, yeah, I think you're getting a piece of the cut on that because you put a lot of energy into this without a doubt. So I understand there's even an option for people who don't need credits
Mhm.
to to watch the programs and at least get the education, even if they're not going to get credit for a licensure or something.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm trying to do with my program is with all online courses that I create, and these online courses are created for professional applicators to get continuing education credits to maintain their license, but I'm taking them and producing a screen recording of the training, and it's available on YouTube. So it's on the USU Pesticide Safety Education Program's YouTube channel. Where to go?
You want me to share screen?
Yeah, why don't we?
All right, let me do that. Okay.
Where do I want to go?
I'm just gonna share. Well, let me see if I can give it to you. Let me see if I can
You
share
make me
it.
co-host, I should be able to.
All right, I think I don't. Let me see if I haven't done this before with my Zoom, and I don't know if I can. Let's see. Okay, advanced sharing options, all participants. There we go.
Here we are.
Very good. Okay, so there, I think I've given it to you now.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I grab the right thing. All right, I believe you're looking at a YouTube channel now, right?
Yeah, we are. So proper respirator use.
Yep. So this is looking at what the video is. It's broken into chapters. So there's introduction and then where, when, and why. So if you want to jump back, I don't know if the audio is going to come through.
PPE is the last line of defense.
Oh, a little bit.
It should be attempted, and when possible, PPE should be used in combination with.
So basically what it
Nice.
is there's the audio recording, the text is right here. When it gets to the end of the audio recording, then they'll be able to click complete the content, or they'll be able to click next.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to show you, I shouldn't have moved because I had something.
Okay.
Here we go. So this is towards the end of a section, and this is one of the sorting activities. So you have these three here.
And drag each description to its corresponding acronym.
So you have these three definitions, these three acronyms, and you have to drag them together to make them match.
Okay, nice.
And this is, of course, just reviewing what was just discussed in the module. So we just talked about the EPA, we just talked about work protection standards, and we just talked about OSHA. And now you got to match the three up, you click submit, you got them all right, congratulations, you click continue, and you get to move on.
Very good.
So these trainings are designed to be right around 50 minutes. So this video is 57 minutes long. So it's a lot to sit down and watch just for entertainment purposes, so to speak, or just for a light education. But again, it's broken into chapters. So you can jump to regulatory, you can jump to the fit testing part. And there are videos built in going through fit testing and stuff like that too. So on the channel, nope, that didn't get me there. I'm new to having a channel.
Yeah.
Your videos.
And I would just tell everyone listening, hey, you're going to get your vehicle oil changed. You may go to the repair shop. Rather than just simply watching, cat videos. I doubt many of my audience is watching cat videos, but you could be doing a little bit of training here. If you have employees or work, when you can say, hey, I want you to watch this 1 hour video. It doesn't cost you anything. It's taken care of by this grant that Dr. Wierda got. And this can make sure it reinforces something that's very important for your health and safety. And you can trust the information because it's done by professionals who are experts in their field. And so, which is also important because the internet can be a little scary at times.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. So yeah, they're out there, they're available. There's going to be more on this page eventually. Another thing just to mention, don't know if your listeners would be all that interested, but we do have a Facebook page. And I've been doing what we call pesticide safety education roundtables, which are brief, about 15-minute discussions of something pesticide safety education related for the homeowner. So not the professional applicator, but just the normal homeowner, somebody at home. Sometimes we discuss the difference between risk and hazard because that's pesticide safety and all that. But there is other options out there. These videos will eventually migrate to the YouTube channel, and I'll create yearly playlists of them and stuff like that too.
But this could be important for those of us for those of the audience that are more into the pest control side of things. There may be topics that you may have a client who is really they're just bothering you so much about a subject, and this is something you could even put on your service slip and say, hey, this particular video may be very helpful for you. You could email it to them, and that would be a way of adding value to your service, and you know that the information that your client's going to get is going to be quality, and you know, you're not necessarily trying to sell them something new. And that risk and hazard is a very important distinction. I think that would be, so check those out. Can you go over some of the other topics that I know I think I even did one.
Yeah, you just did one about rodent control just
rodent
recently.
control. Yeah, I think I remember that.
But we've done risk versus hazard. We've talked about pollinator protection. We've talked about spring cleaning of pesticides and storage of your pesticides. I think we did one about the Roundup and the IARC findings and the research and the science behind that.
Yeah, that's a timely one.
Yeah. And if someone of any of your listeners, if they have thoughts on topics they think that would be good for this, please go to our Facebook page. Just get on Facebook, search USU PSEP, search USU pesticides. You'll find us fairly quickly. The page's official title is USU extension -PSEP, but a quick search of USU PSEP or pesticides should probably get you there. But if you have a topic that you think would be interested, please let us know. Send us a comment, send us a message. The only advice I have in relation to the roundtables is keep in mind this is for the homeowner.
Right. So watch your acronyms. Anything else? So this is great. We have some training that that our audience can look at for their respirator, either as a self-refresher. If they're looking to get credits, they should contact their own state and then have the state speak to you to be sure it's going to be registered in their state. Is that probably what they should do? How many states do you think you have agreements with now?
Well, these just rolled out on extension just 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so it's new. All right.
Yeah, this is actually talking about it here is the first official time we've talked.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, wow. So I'm scooping here. Yeah, this is great. We got the scoop here on the Pest Geek podcast. All right.
Yeah, we're working on basically a press release that's going to go out to all PSEPs and also to all state lead agencies to let them know that these exist, so we can work towards getting reciprocity. With different states.
Well, it shouldn't be hard with Montana, so you should be able to get that registered here pretty quick. We do a lot of online testing. I mean, a lot of online training in the state. So without a doubt. Anything you'd like to add before we wrap up here?
Actually, let me see if I can grab the right folder real quick. I just thought of a couple more resources.
All right, great. Well, just a reminder, everyone, look up USU extension -PSEP. That's PSEP, USU for Utah State University extension PSEP on Facebook. If you have ideas for his pesticide safety roundtable, he'd be happy to hear. Dr. Wierda would love to hear from you. So put your ideas in there and do look through the videos first, just to make sure you're not giving them an idea they've already worked on. But also, and for looking up these videos on YouTube, again, you're looking for that USU PSEP on YouTube, and you'll be able to get these two videos on respirator work. You don't get credits for it, but you'll be able to watch those at no no charge, and that's going to be very valuable for both you and for any employees that you have. And then you can write that down. I've trained my workers, and
Mhm.
that's going to be important for any type of workman's comp issues as well.
Yeah, 100%. I found about a dozen folders, but none of them had the two things I wanted in them.
Okay.
So I don't have it. What I was going to look for is a couple respiratory safety manuals that exist out in the world. There's one from PERC, so PERC.
Okay.
And then there's also who was the other one from? The EPA. They're both on
Or
the
not,
net.
or NIOSH.
NIOSH. I think that's it.
NIOSH.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And both of those things are available on the National Pesticide Safety Education Center's store page.
Store page. NEPSEC store page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And eventually we'll see, we're gonna do some bundling. So you could, if it's somebody who needs CEUs, they could buy the course and get some of the other materials at discounted prices.
Oh, nice.
So that's going to come eventually too. But again, we just rolled this out
Excellent.
a week or so ago.
Well, good. So that's the PERC respirator manual, and then the NIOSH respirator manuals, and those are available with NEPSEC. That's the National Pesticide Safety Education Center.
Correct.
That's out of University of Michigan, I believe.
Yeah, it's a virtual center, but it's housed out of Michigan State University.
So NEPSEC, NPSEC, their store page, NPSEC. Again, we have a ton of acronyms. I think I should do a show just on pesticide education acronyms, because I got a sheet from Linda Johnson, which was very helpful.
Oh yeah, okay. The whole glossary.
I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of acronyms in this field. Yeah. So we don't have that many in wildlife control, that's for sure.
I mean, we have acronyms inside of acronyms.
Oh, it's ridiculous. All right. Well, Dr. Wierda, we're really glad to have you on the show. Congratulations on getting your video training out there. And I do hope our viewers are going to be using this material and following it, not just watching it, but we want you to follow it to protect yourself, folks. I mean, this is about your health and safety. We want you to be around and retire and be healthy and wealthy and well, right? So this is what we want. Well, we're wrapping up here the Pest Geek podcast, or Living the Wildlife, and we want just a reminder, everyone, please take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, join us on Facebook with the Pest Geek podcast channel there on Facebook. We'd love to have you talk about your triumphs and trials, ask questions, and join part of the revolution, as Franklin calls it. And we call this Living the Wildlife. Why do we call it Living the Wildlife? Well, because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.